welcome. My name is Jocelyn and today we are doing an anti-haul. Usually I film what I call thoughts on drops, which are inspired by Samantha March's Will I Buy It series, but I was kind of looking at the new releases and I realized that a lot of the stuff that I was seeing was stuff I just wasn't going to buy. So I thought, well, why not go ahead and just film an anti-haul instead of a thoughts on drops. So here we are. I'm going to be talking about some things that are more recent, some things that are a little tad bit older, but for the most part these are things that have released in the last month or so, and there's no spoilers. I'm not going to be buying this stuff, probably. All right, let me scoot over so that we can pop some pictures of what I will be. Why is my battery dying? I just changed it. All right, we have a full battery. Let's get started. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is one of the things that's a little bit older, and these didn't make it into my last thoughts on drops, even though the rest of this collection did. And what I want to touch on is the Anastasia Beverly Hills mini eyeshadow palettes. I think as of this moment, these are the most recent things to have launched from ABH. We still have some more time in the year, so it's possible that she might slip another release in there, but as of right now, we have these two palettes. When I first saw them, I was immediately like, no, and I think it was because I was feeling just so overwhelmed by all of the releases she had been releasing that I saw these two and I was like, no, I don't need those. So she has the two. She has the pinky purple one and she has the blue green coral one. I think the blue green coral one is more my style than the pinky purple one, but also I don't need these. I have some palettes that have a handful of these shades in there already. I have some single shadows that are very in these tones. I think that they're interesting and unique maybe, but I have no interest in these. I don't want these. If I want blues, greens, purples, pinks, I'll reach for my single shadows or I'll reach for a palette that already has those in there. I don't really like the naming convention of these either. I mean, I understand it, but it doesn't even look like the names are actually in the palette. So that's kind of, don't love that. Like when you're looking at the shades in the palette, the names aren't there. And they're just A1, A2, A3, B1, B2, B3, AC1, you know, so on and so forth. So I just noticed that there's an A1 in both palettes, completely different shades, and A2 in both palettes. So they all go from A1 to C3. That makes me like these even less. So yeah, I'm not gonna buy these. The color stories are fine, but I don't need an already created palette with these colors in them. I'll just pull for the ones that I like. In the green blue one, there's a creamsicle orange. Definitely have that many times over. There's a maroon, have that. A brown, have that. An orange, have that. Oh, something that just recently launched is the new Colourpop Bare Necessities palette. I will say that I do really adore the name Bare Necessities from Jungle Book, of course, but I don't like big palettes. If you're familiar with my channel, you might know that. If you're not, now you know. I do not like big palettes. The only big palette that I have left is the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette, so I do still have that. Oh, it's actually back here. Look at that. And then even like this size is a bit too big for me. This is the Violet Voss Eyeshadow Pro Holy Grail palette. This is probably borderline. This is about as big as I would ever want to go. I would say like 15 eyeshadows in a palette is probably max comfort level. This has 30 shadows, if I'm not mistaken, which is a lot in one palette. Big palettes, hard to store. Sometimes they can be hard to look at and really come up with the look because it's a little overwhelming to have all of those shades in there. Also, I find in big palettes like this, a lot of times there's a bunch of repeat shades or shades that are just so similar to each other that once you get them on the eye, they basically look identical to each other. I see a couple like that in here, but not too many, which is nice. For somebody who only needs one palette in their life, maybe this would be a good option, but I have these shades over and over again in my collection. This palette probably isn't marketed towards someone like me, but I will not be picking it up. Oh, let's go ahead and talk about, I think the last Colourpop thing that I wanted to talk about. It is the Colourpop Frozen Disney collaboration. I have the original Disney Colourpop palette. This one right here. I thought that the designs on it were absolutely beautiful. I love the recreation of the princesses. It's a very neutral palette. Not the best or most exciting, but it's fine, and I absolutely adore the packaging on this. These Frozen palettes, they don't have the same effect on me. They feel a lot more like Claire's like to me, because there's no like recreation, right? They're Frozen, the Frozen characters, Anna and Elsa. And I mean, the palettes look fine, not anything that I'm interested in. The design isn't something I'm super drawn to. I like the movies. I'm excited to see the next one. Haven't seen it yet. But just unlike the design of this one, which really grabbed me and I really, really adore, the design doesn't pull me in at all, and the color story also doesn't pull me in at all. So I will not be picking up the Colourpop Frozen Disney launches. Ooh, next. This one was launched I think a while ago, but I haven't talked about it on my channel yet. And this is a product by Too Faced, another palette. I think that all I'm really talking about today is palettes. This is the Gingerbread Extra Spicy palette. If you wouldn't have told me, I would not have known that this was a different palette. There's nothing special about this palette. It looks like any other warm toned palette. It doesn't scream Christmas to me, even though gingerbread is like a Christmas kind of thing. There's so many warm shades and then this really dark sparkly blue shade. If you have a warm toned palette, you don't need this palette. I have the Tarte Toasted palette. I have the Urban Decay Heat palette. I even have the Sweet Peach palette by Too Faced. Any of those would be almost the same as this, especially the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette, which I love. I do like Too Faced formula, and I mean, the shades don't look bad or anything like that. I mean, they look pretty, but again, I have a handful of warm tone palettes, and if you do too, you don't need this palette. Let's move on from Too Faced to Tarte. So Tarte is kind of one of my favorite brands. They have so many products that just work very, very well for me and that I just love. They recently collaborated with Lele Pons. If you're not familiar with who Lele Pons is, I don't really know too much about her. I think that she was a Vine star turned YouTuber who makes very cringy content. She's got a huge following. Millions and millions of people follow her. And she collaborated with Tarte, which, I mean, probably not a bad choice of person to collaborate with, because she has a lot of following and a lot of people are going to purchase this palette, but I will absolutely not be one of these people. So the palette itself has 9 eyeshadows, a blush, and a highlight. I really hate the way that the pans are tilted. I think that it looks just I just don't like it. They look just funky. They're not squares, they're little rectangles, so they wouldn't look like, I could see that they were just trying to do something a little different, but I'm just personally not a fan. The color story in here looks just not, no, it looks like we have 6 shimmers and 3 matte shades, very, very basic colors. Again, these colors exist all throughout my collection. Don't need it, not gonna buy it. Lele Pons is not someone who I particularly like or support, so I have absolutely no interest in this palette. Oh, next, another palette. So this is a palette by Ofra Cosmetics. This is their most recently launched, what is this? The Soul palette. They did send a bunch of influencers to, was it LA, to do some kind of launch for this. This is a pretty palette. It is, it's a really pretty palette. We have a lot of shimmers in here, some mattes, some highlighters, it looks like a bronzer, a yellow color corrector perhaps, and a blush. It's a pretty palette. It's a neutral palette. Again, I have these colors throughout my collection. I don't need to buy this, especially for $79. $80 basically for this palette. I couldn't imagine purchasing that for $80. There are so many other palettes that I would way prefer. For example, what I have on my eyes today, the Natasha Denona Sunrise palette, $65. 10 out of 10, worth it. I didn't pay $65, I bought it during a sale. And there's 2 highlight shades in here that aren't my tone. The blush looks a little bit dark, and then all of the eyeshadow shades are relatively dark, so I just don't think that I would get much use out of this, especially not for $79. On to the last thing, which is another eyeshadow palette. And this is something that when it first launched, I immediately said, nope, don't need that. And I threw it into this anti-haul because of that. And the more I look at it, the more I'm like, that is so beautiful, but I don't need it, which is why it's still in this anti-haul. This is the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette. Now, this is a beautiful palette. It has some really beautiful, unique shimmer shades, some nice neutral transition matte shades and darker matte shades, but I think I have a lot of these shades throughout my collection already, and I have a lot of these unique shimmer shades either in other palettes or as single pan eyeshadows, and Huda Beauty eyeshadows are very expensive. I mean, I just pointed out a Natasha Denona palette, which was $65, so $67. Okay, so it's expensive. I mean, I have expensive palettes, but especially when my first thought was, I don't need that. I really don't like the fact that I looked at it a few other times and realized that I do really like it. So there's like kind of 2 halves to this palette. There's a very, very colorful side that has a bright coral, the purples, the blues, almost like a lavender pink color. And then there's a whole bunch of neutral shades. So there's a gold, a rose gold, a peachy transition shade, a tan transition shade. There's a lot of neutrals and a lot of colors, which is kind of nice in this palette. I feel like I'm talking myself into buying this palette, even though I'm not. I will not buy this palette. It is stinking beautiful, but I just, again, I feel like I already own this palette throughout my collection, which means I don't need it, no matter how beautiful it is. All right, next we're gonna talk about something that, this might not come as any surprise, but maybe it will. I don't know. Let's next talk about the Jaclyn Hill Cosmetics highlighter launch. I have several different feelings about this, all very conflicting. First of all, I think these are beautiful. I'm not gonna lie about that. I think these are beautiful products, especially the palettes, which I've seen used all over the place, and they just create such a beautiful glow on the cheeks from what I've seen. I think the packaging is beautiful. I know that there's been a lot of talk about the ripoff of the packaging from Becca and from Hourglass. I don't really care about that. I love the packaging of Becca and Hourglass products, and I see the inspiration drawn from those. I think that they're beautiful. Will I be buying them? No, at least not as of this moment. One of the reasons is I'm pretty sure I'd be ripped to shreds from a lot of people, kind of rightfully so. I personally feel like I wouldn't be very comfortable purchasing from the brand at this time, just based on everything that happened, of course, over the last half of a year. When did her lipsticks launch? I don't remember, but I did purchase her lipsticks. In fact, I still have them somewhere. I did get a refund, so I don't really personally have an issue with the brand. The lipsticks were a flop. I got my money back. No harm, no foul. I know that some people have had a lot worse experience, at least so they say on social media, which is pretty shitty. I don't feel comfortable purchasing from the brand at this time, so I will not be purchasing from the brand at this time. If her brand has continual successes and things go really well, products are of highest quality and all of that jazz, I could see myself potentially purchasing from them at some point in the future. But as of this moment, there's still quite the bad taste in my mouth, so I will not be purchasing these. Also, the price points are a lot higher up than I was expecting. I think that her lipsticks were like 18 bucks, which is pretty on par with a lot of other lipsticks. But the powders, for example, $32. The palettes, $49. The brushes are each $20 or more. I just feel like the prices are a little bit too high. But again, we'll see how everything goes and what the future holds. And those are all the things that I wanted to talk about. I know this was probably a relatively short video because we only touched on a handful of things. If there are any of these products that you have on your wish list or anti-haul list, let me know down in the comments below. Or do you perhaps already own some of these products and absolutely love them, or absolutely don't love them and can confirm that we do not in fact need them. Let me know down in the comments below. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and if you want to subscribe for more content, don't forget to do so before you go. All of those buttons are down below, and I think that is everything I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.